Have you been writing songs for a while, but you're wondering whether or not it's worth your time to learn how to read music? You think that it'll probably open up some doors for you, but you're not sure if it's really worth the time and the effort. Today I'm going to be talking about how learning to read music is neither as scary nor as hard as you might think that it is. But depending on your circumstances, it may or may not actually be the best use of your time. This video is going to help you decide. Hi, I'm Brian from Unmute Your Muse TV, where we teach 5-minute masterclasses for songwriters. We use the Gold Song Solution to help you write the kinds of songs that people will love, buy, and tell their friends about. I want you to think back to the time when you were first learning how to read. When you were in preschool and kindergarten, first learning your letters and then able to put those letters together into words. You might have started off with some Step 1 books, or maybe some of these little golden books. Maybe you read some of the amazing Dick and Jane books that are out there. For a lot of little kids, it can be kind of challenging sometimes because it's just a struggle to pick up so much information. How can these little scratches on a piece of paper actually mean something? Well, it's the same thing for music, and a lot of people just look at written music as this mysterious otherworldly kind of thing. Like, how can all of that stuff that's just scrawled on the page, like, why is that something that I can hear? It's just like little scratches on a piece of paper. So I want you to try and remember what it was like to be a little kid and to be struggling with learning this thing that seemed so foreign at first. But then, you start to get the hang of it eventually, and things start to click into place. And pretty soon, you're able to read your whole words on your own, or put a whole sentence together, or read a big passage and actually understand what it's trying to convey. Now, flash forward to where you are now, and think about what your life would be like if you couldn't read, if you went through the world without being able to interact with text in any way. It would limit the kind of work that you can do as a job. It would limit the way that you interact with the things around you. Like, you couldn't go to the grocery store and read the ingredients off the back of a piece of food. Reading unlocks so many different things for us. Just the amount of books that are out there. Think of all of the stories and the passion and the great tales that you would not have access to if you didn't know how to read. Well, the same thing's true for learning to read music. There are hundreds of years now of Western music tradition that's been recorded, not just sonically where you can listen to it playback, but you've got written music for so much amazing music. If you don't know how to read that music, you can't interact with it the same way. It's one thing to be able to listen to like a Mozart piano concerto. It's something entirely different for you to be able to read that music and learn how to play it yourself when your fingers and your body are involved in the process. It's a different kind of knowing than you can get from just listening to something. Another great thing about learning to read music is that it can unlock all sorts of great things for you as an instrumentalist or a vocalist. And if you would like to actually get better as a performer, learning to be able to read some of the great pieces of music that have been performed in the past or written in the past can unlock all sorts of great things for you as a performer. Music notation is also an incredibly great way for you to communicate with other people. Like, if you can actually, write a part out and be like, hey, violin player, I want you to play this, rather than just humming it to them, that's certainly more effective. It's also a great way for you to take notes when you're writing songs about music for yourself. Like, there are a lot of great things that I've written in the past, and had I not written it down, I wouldn't have remembered what was going on. Learning to read music can also be a great way to help you with writing out arrangements. If you've got a whole bunch of different working parts that are going to have to interact with each other as you're producing a song, or just even arranging the different parts for a song, learning to read music can be super helpful in making sure that all of those parts are working together the way that you want them to. Perhaps the most important reason to learn to read music is for a better understanding of rhythms. You can have music without pitched notes, but you can't have music without rhythms. Rhythms are the foundation of everything in music, whether it's a melody or a chord structure or a groove. Rhythms are what it all comes down to in the end. And if you can learn to read those rhythms, that gives you a much better understanding so that you can write some better grooves, communicate those grooves and melodies and chord patterns to other people that you could not do if you didn't know how to read those rhythms. And last but not least, Learning to read music is super, super good for your brain. There's hardly any activity in all of the world that lights up more areas of your brain than reading music. It involves taking things in, it involves processing, it involves your ears, it involves the motor things that go with your body to learn to play them. It's a whole body activity, super good for your brain, and boy is it a lot of fun. Alright, now let's look at some of the cons to learning to read music. For one thing, learning to read music does take a fair bit of time. Just like learning to read English took you some time as a kid, learning to read the notes off of a page will take some time investment. Now, I don't think it's quite as big as you might think, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but there is definitely a time component involved. And along with that is also some work that's going to have to go into it. You can't just sit back and passively osmose the ability to read music. It is something that you're going to have to actually put some effort into. But I think, honestly, that's one of the best reasons to do it is the reward that you get for every little accomplishment as you're learning to read music feels really good. Now, for a lot of you singer-songwriters out there whose first instrument is guitar, learning to read music for guitar is particularly challenging. Now, I've taught guitar lessons to hundreds of students over the years, and it's just incredibly frustrating to think, okay, that note is on the third space, so that means it's a C, so that means I could play it on the first fret on the B string, or the fifth fret on the G string, or the 10th fret on the D string, etc., and I could use fingers 1 here or 2 there, and there's just so many numbers and so many different things that get all gelled together in your head that learning to read music on guitar it's just not the easiest thing in the world. So if guitar is your primary instrument, it might actually be a good idea for you to learn to read music on piano or pick a wind instrument, learn to play saxophone or trumpet or something like that. Honestly, I think everybody should start doing this on piano, just because piano's so valuable in so many other ways, but that's another lesson for another day. Now, here are a couple other things to consider. In the last couple years, since music has gone entirely digital and we have so many apps on our computers and our phones that take the place of older technology, things have changed a little bit. For example, like when I used to write melodies, I would have to write them down or I would forget them. Like you come back the next day and you're like, okay, I've got these words here, but I can't remember what notes I had going on with them. And if I didn't actually physically write it down, I wouldn't be able to remember what they were. But now we've got these little mobile recording studios that we carry around with us in our pockets, and it's just as easy now to turn on a voice memo or one of the great music recording apps, hum the melody into your phone, and then you've got it. Like, you don't even have to necessarily write it down. So that's not really an issue anymore. Another thing is that so much of our production goes on inside a DAW, a digital audio workstation, and that all of the data there is recorded by MIDI. So things never necessarily even need to be in standard notation. You can program things and write things out and have all of your arrangements happen, and it's there on the keyboard within your DAW. So you don't even have to ever have written a lot of your arrangements into standard notation. So some of the technology makes some of the old uses for standard notation kind of superfluous. So what you're going to have to do for yourself is to make an informed and intentional decision as to whether the pros outweigh the cons. It is a little bit of an investment, but it does open a lot of doors for you. So just sit down for a minute and decide whether or not you think this is going to be a good use of your time. Now, if you do decide that learning to read music is a good use of your time, then let me give you a couple pieces of advice to save you some time and some stress. If you're going to do it, you need to commit to doing it. It's not something that you can just I'm going to spend 5 minutes here and 20 minutes there, and it's just going to happen for you. As with any new skill that you're developing, consistency is very important. So I would recommend at least spending 15 minutes a day, 3 to 5 days a week. The more days in a week that you can do it in small chunks every day, that's going to help you pick up and remember the information a lot faster. Now, like I said, guitar is not the best way to start reading music, or ukulele, or any of those other stringed instruments. I would recommend starting on piano, and there are a ton of great books out there for beginner piano players. And if you want to make the process go even faster, I would recommend getting yourself some private lessons. That'll help help you identify exactly the kinds of things that you need to work on, and it'll just make the process go a lot smoother. So weigh the pros and cons. Decide whether or not learning to read music is a good idea for you right now. Maybe now's not the best time. Maybe you're busy working on a lot of other things and you don't have the time to commit to it right now. Maybe you can just push it off for a little later on down the road. But the sooner you learn these skills, the longer you're going to be able to use them, and the more it's going to be able to help with a wide variety of different things in your musical life. All right, so what I want you to do right now is to go over to our Facebook group, Unmute Your Muse. There's a link in the show description. And I want you to say whether or not you think learning to read music right now is a good use of your time for where you are, and give your reasons. Now, if you already know how to read music, why don't you chime in with some comments about how you use music as a songwriter and how it's benefited you over the years, or whether you think that it was a good decision or not to learn how to read music. I'd love to see your discussion, so join us over there on the Facebook group.